find it very weird being called sir because not too long ago I was in the wrong campus, not IIM Bangalore, I was in Ahmedabad. Good to have you all here. I'm an investor in Indian startups. I love the startup ecosystem and I'm very bullish on India. So I'll be talking about why I'm long India. So there are homeless people on the left and gleaming office buildings on the right. Which one is India?
Both.
The answer is just one of them is India. So left, please raise your hands.
USA.
The homeless people,
US.
okay, and the right.
Hyderabad.
Okay, no, I'm not asking for the city. So we are so used to seeing poverty in India that the reverse seems like it can't be true. That there's homelessness in the US. The picture on the left was actually from San Francisco, which is supposed to be the tech ecosystem's pioneer in the world. The one on the right is Bangalore, so people think it's the opposite. And I'm going to deep dive into what is India's truth. My favorite quote about India is, it disappoints both the optimists and the pessimists. So I was in a fork in the road in 2013. I was a third year student at IIT Bombay. I was sitting for placements the next year. Eventually, in the IITs in December you have placements. So December 2013, I got an offer from a top tier consulting firm. When I spoke to the partners there, they were like, hey, we'll send you to the US, you'll go to Harvard or Stanford in 4 years. I was very enamored by that. But thankfully, luckily, I did well at the CAT, got into Ahmedabad, and I ended up choosing IMA. Now, after I took the offer from IMA, the partner at the consulting firm that I had got into called me and said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Like, you're going to leave this opportunity to go to the US, get exposed to the world, diversity, so many other things. You're going to do the same old stuff that you're doing in IIT Bombay, the same Indian people, you're going to meet them. Why are you going to Ahmedabad? I was very confused. And he was pretty angry, so I was like, okay, maybe I'm making a wrong call. But I stuck to my guns. And then when I thought about where I would end up in, I've highlighted the states I would be in. The one in green was one where I wished to be, which was Goa, but nobody obviously had offices there then. And like if I looked at data, and I'm a data person, it made no sense staying in India. The US was 9 times bigger. It was 17 trillion. India was just barely 2. VC funding was 14 times. There were 130x the number of millionaires, 13 million in the US and just a lakh. And internet penetration in India in 2013 was 12%, and the US was 70%. The partner said I was stupid, my friend said I was stupid, not going to the US. They could still end up being right, by the way. The story is still going to play out. I took a 50-year decision, and I'll walk you through what my thought process was. I was pretty young, and I asked myself a very important question, which I will come to as I walk through where we are now. 10 years later, and we don't really appreciate the magnitude of what has happened, but we've added a full India in those 10 years. 2 trillion plus 2 trillion, almost. And just imagine that the whole economy that was there in 2013 has been added to the country in 10 years. The number of millionaires have exploded. It's almost 20 times. VC funding in 21 was incredibly high, and as you can see, almost an exponential growth over the last 10 years. In 2013, like I said, internet penetration was 12.3%. Thanks to Mr. Ambani and Jio, it just went into a different orbit. Almost half the country is now connected to the internet. How did I predict this? Of course, I had predicted the future. So if you guys want to know which stocks to pick, please ask me. I'll tell you which ones will go up this year. I knew all of this was going to happen. So here are the forecasting models I use. It's not a joke. Of course it was a joke. So I'm kidding. No one can forecast the future. But I asked myself one important question. That was the one that I was talking about when I started. It wasn't where I can be today. It is where should I be tomorrow. And everybody I spoke to in 2013 were talking about today. Now, I just turned 30, so not very old, at least I like to believe, not very old. And the question I asked myself was, hey, when I'll be 40 or 45, where do I want to be? And then, what are the questions you should ask yourself to answer that question? So I asked myself, where should I be tomorrow? And if you look long term, this is one question you should ask yourself. You should focus on the most macro trend. And at the end of the day, we are people and humans, and where human beings are is the most macro trend that one should look at. Everything else just flows from that. So the question was, where will people be in 50 years' time? India last year surpassed China as the most populated country in the world. I think a lot of us think of it as a negative, but I think of it as the biggest positive and the boon that we have. It's a huge, huge opportunity. If you look at the distribution by age, and I'll go into that in a little bit of detail, we have a lot of young people, a lot of young people. In 2100, which is about 80 years from now, 5 billion people will be in Asia, 4 billion people will be in Africa, and there'll be one in the rest of the continents, Americas and Europe. This is a very important statistic. And this particular statistic drove my decision. I know I hope to live to 2100, but the trend line is it's not going to change. And I think the answer that I got was to bet against Africa and Asia is to bet against humanity, because if the majority of the world is going to be there, there's no chance, if we progress, we will not be seeing the upside of it. It is bound to happen. But a lot of you would be thinking, hey, that's a very simplistic argument. Like, India is so populated, we're still poor, Africa is poor, we have people. And I'll tell you why I think this is going to change. And I've been a big beneficiary of this trend in the last 10 years, and I don't think that that trend is going to stop anytime soon, because the wheel that turns and momentum that goes on doesn't stop. The engines that are there today in these two large continents, and let's focus on India today, we are a very young population, and our potential is still to be unlocked. So in the next 30 to 40 years, we'll see a lot of this starting to play out. This is an incredible statistic. 910 million Indians are Gen Z or millennial. It's a very large, working, energetic, aspirational population that is just yet to see things play out. China has contracted because of their one-child policy, and you can see the rest of the countries, except maybe the United States, are all young and growing still to see their potential. The average age of India is 26, US is 38, and the EU is 43. So all of you here who are in your mid-20s are the median, but all of you in your 30s and 40s would be the median in the US and EU. It's a very big difference. In many ways, we are 12 years behind the US. In 12 to 15 years, we will look a lot like where the US is today. And it may not be from an absolute dollar terms, but on a purchasing power parity basis, we'll be very close. We'll look a lot like the US. And why I say young people are so important is because they form the largest base of entrepreneurs, largest base of consumers and creators. And this is the flywheel that has started to kick in. I think I could sense some of it when I was making my decision, but now it's just playing out very, very strongly. China's growth is not a one-off. In fact, like we've seen this happen in China. They've gone through the same motions. Uh, they had a very young population, which has accelerated the country to another orbit, and it's going to be the same in India, is what I believe. So India's rise is a question of when, not if, but there's still some things that could constrain this people's engine. And not everything is hunky-dory, not everything is perfect. As a nation that is as large as ours, will have challenges. And I'll focus on the challenges on people, because as I said, that is the macro trend that we should be looking at. The biggest one, I think, and a lot of people talk about it as a health hazard, but I think it is much, much more than that. It's going to be probably the biggest constraint if we don't solve it, because on average, if it stays this way, we'll be losing 6 to 7 years per person. Just imagine the amount of person years that you lose. Like if you just multiply it by the population of India, it's 8 billion person years lost at scale. And as you can see, like most of the country, especially the northern belt, which has the most number of people, is the one that is struggling the most with this. And we really, really need to solve this. The second issue is our employment rate with this young population has not really picked up. And there's a big gap even with the US. That 14% gap is almost 140 million people. And I think that's one we really need to solve. Again, putting this people engine to work is a big challenge. Hopefully with opportunities we'll solve. And finally, I don't know, a lot of people don't talk about this a lot, but the better half of this engine, which is the women, labor participation in India is abject for women. In fact, if you look at our comparable set, it is close to Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. I like to look at exponents because exponents surprise you. I think a lot of us would have seen that in the pandemic. We don't have an intuitive feel of what exponents are, but now I think a lot more of us have it. And I look for exponentials everywhere. The first big exponential that has really picked up, and I think that's the reason why Bangalore is what it is today, is IT services. When India liberalized, it was just a $1 billion revenue industry. Today it's 245 billion. In fact, the most surprising thing is we export more IT than Saudi Arabia exports oil. That is, I don't think something anyone talks about, but it's true. This is one that we've seen. I have friends from the US who come and they just cannot believe that we scan a QR code and with trust give someone 15 rupees. In the US, it feels like you're 100 years in the past where you're signing checks. It's insane. And this is another exponential that has made UPI go from less than 0.1% of Visa's volume to almost 60% of Visa's volume. And Visa is a global network, by the way. UPI is just India focused. The next exponent, it's not like a beautiful exponent, but it will, I think, play out this way, is the number of unicorns. One in 2012, again, a Bangalore company, Flipkart, 203. And finally, the Sensex, another exponent. Everyone says hold investments in equity. I suggest you do that. Please don't treat this as financial advice. Innovation is not the only one with exponents. It seems like all the digital stuff grows exponentially, but there's hard infrastructure that's also growing exponentially. You will be really surprised if you look at long-term trends of hard infrastructure also showing the same thing. This one is the most surprising. I did not expect this. Solar capacity in India has just skyrocketed. It is an exponent. In the last 12 years, we've gone from being outside the top 10 to top 3 globally in terms of installed energy. And why this is important is because of the pollution point that I made earlier. Our transition to clean energy will be a lot accelerated by this particular exponent. Over 20-year time frame, vehicles on road, again, super growth. We don't see it on a year-to-year basis, but if you look at it from 20, 23 years ago, it's a very different country. Road length, over a 70-year time frame. You have to change time frames to see exponents because some things take more time. A more connected country provides more opportunities, more safety, more access. and these are things we all need to move ahead. Where do we go from here? So I'm just sticking my head out and making some predictions. Some might sound super wild, some might sound like they make sense. I think in the next 10 years, another India will get added, so we'll be 8 trillion plus economy, 9 trillion plus in market cap. We'll be having one company, at least in the top 20, we actually don't have any, even though Reliance is so large, it's not in the top 20 in the world. We'll have two megapolises. The megapolis is seen most in China with the Shenzhen region and a bunch of others. My bet is it's going to be Mumbai, Pune, and Delhi NCR. We'll have 250 plus unicorns, 250,000 startups, be a leader in the South Asian and Southeast Asian corridor, which will have almost 25 trillion in GDP. We'll be a global fintech leader. We'll be pioneers in regulation, pioneers in payment network infrastructure and lending infrastructure. I think the next 5 years we'll see a lot of innovation on the lending side because India is building a very strong stack there. I think there'll be a $25 billion startup that will be the largest and was born after this year. So maybe one of you sitting here could be the founder of it. I don't know, hopefully. The IITs would have broken into the top 50 global educational rankings. 50% of energy will be produced by renewables, with solar being the largest. I imagine IT service firms who are having a little bit of trouble last year because of the US also slowing down will transform into fine-tuning and building open source LLMs. I think AI will be extremely important. We'll have a top 20 Olympics finish, at least 4 gold medals, top 10 tourist destination globally, one creator-led unicorn, which means there's a creator who owns, runs, and has scaled that unicorn. And finally, flying cars and or drones deployed at scale. You all will be surprised that EVTOL is actually being implemented in the US as we speak. So we could have flying taxis much earlier than we would have ever imagined. So just to close, I would implore you to ask not where you should be today, but where you will be tomorrow. If you take a long enough time frame, you'll be able to answer that question easily. Thank you.